We're cooking it up in here. Look at that. It is wonderful. Oh, this is so pretty. Ooh, looks scrumptious. Hey everybody, I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera show. You know, people ask me all the time, what is your favorite cookbook? Well, believe it or not, it's Being Dead is No Excuse. This is the official Southern guide to hosting the perfect funeral. You know, in our area, when someone passes away, we're always expected to take something to host for the family after the funeral. So this cookbook, authored by Gaden Metcalf and Charlotte Hayes, really celebrates some of the South's best. We're going to start with the Leland grits Gruyere. This is a fantastic side dish. And then Virginia's butter beans. If you're looking for a new vegetable, you're going to love this one. And then finally, Mother's banana bread. This is so scrumptious. And in Vera's Corner today, we're going to go over tips on setting the proper table. So I'm so anxious to get started. Let's jump on into that Leland grits Gruyere. All right, well, grits are obviously a very strong Southern comfort food, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And this dish in particular is so creamy, you can use it for most any purpose. I love making it. And I had a little bit I had to do in advance. I got the milk coming to a really nice rumbling boil. Then I added in my butter and I poured the grits in very slowly and started with my wire whisk. And you're gonna have about 5 minutes involved in getting this to the right consistency. So I'm almost there. But you know, there's so many different kinds of grits too. There's instant. And if you're using instant grits, you might as well be eating cream of wheat. There's just not a heck of a lot of texture to it. And then there's quick grits. And quick grits are also good if you're in a hurry, but you also want to understand that they're not going to get that nice firm consistency. So when you're making an actual dish that you're going to bake, I highly recommend a coarse ground grit. All right, so I'm going to move this off the heat, and we're going to start with the next part of this, and that is the pepper and salt. So this is white pepper and coarsely ground salt. And this is where I'm gonna bring in my hand mixer. And then you're really gonna get a creaminess to this. And you know, when I think about this cookbook, Being Dead is No Excuse, you know, most people judge a cookbook by all the beautiful pictures in it. Well, you know, there's no pictures in this cookbook. It's almost like a quick read, all the little stories at the top. But you can tell if you're familiar with great recipes just by reading the ingredients how great these recipes are. You don't even really have to test them, which to me is a true sign of a great recipe and a great cookbook. Okay, so now I'm gonna add in the Gruyere cheese and a little bit more butter. And I'm just gonna take my spatula, and I tell you, there's another part to my kitchen that I just love, and that's my star granite countertops, because you saw me take this pot right off the stove and put it directly on the counter, because it will not hurt it at all. All right, just look how creamy those grits are. And this also is gonna bake in the oven at 350 for about 20 minutes. And just look, see the consistency of it? So I've greased my casserole dish, and I'm gonna get those poured in, and then it'll be ready to go in the oven. Just look at that. And you know, I've had such a great time corresponding with Gaden and Charlotte about this book and finding out how to get in touch with them. So you know, you just don't take no for an answer when you're trying to get in touch with somebody. So we've become fast friends, and they're just thrilled that I'm using the recipes out of their book today. All right, so I'm gonna get this in the oven, and when we come back from the break, we're gonna get started on Virginia's butter beans. And I don't know who Virginia is, but I know her butter bean recipe is fantastic. So I'll see you back in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. And if you're just joining me, I'm dusting off the cover of one of my favorite cookbooks from 2005, Being Dead is No Excuse. And the authors, Gaden and Charlotte, have just become my new best friends. I just absolutely love this cookbook. So we got the grits finished, and they baked for 30 minutes. I pulled them out, sprinkled them with some grated Parmesan cheese, and they're back in the oven for 20 minutes, and it really smells awesome in here. All right, so now we're gonna start on Virginia's butter beans. Okay, you know, I'm always looking for a new side dish. You know, you just get to the fact that you're in a rut with what you serve as a side dish sometimes, and this is such a great recipe. And certainly if you do have the occasion where you need to take something when someone has passed away, this is a really good recipe, maybe something different that nobody has seen. So, you know, when you come to butter beans, there's a lot of different choices. And so I've actually got laid out on the board here 3 different types, and in this recipe you could actually use any of the 3. So the lima bean is kind of a medium-sized butter bean, very tender. It works really well. This recipe calls for actual butter beans, and as you can see, those are much larger, and so sometimes you have to make some changes to the recipe when the size of an ingredient is bigger or smaller than what the recipe actually calls for. And then finally, butter peas. I actually love to use those in the summertime when they're in season. So you have a little differentiation in color there on those, but just keep those in mind when you're looking at recipes that call for butter beans. All right, so we went ahead and cooked the bacon that's going to go on top, and then the drippings are left in the pan, and that is where the flavor comes from. And so we're going to saute some vegetables. I've got some wonderful other vegetables that go in this recipe. We're going to start with celery, and all of this is just going to get sauteed. I've got this on like a medium heat, and then we've just got a regular Vidalia onion or a sweet onion, and then also some green onions, and these are the tops of the green onions. And then a little bit of green bell pepper. And you know, sometimes I substitute a red pepper in this recipe just for a little added color. And then 2 teaspoons or 2 large garlic cloves minced. All right, so we're gonna just get that sauteed. So while this is cooking, and oh, I just wish you were here with me because it smells so good in here. You know, just going back to the authors of this book, Charlotte and Gaden, they are just such experts on things like Southern etiquette. And, you know, what to do and how to do it actually takes me back myself in, you know, having great aunts and when my grandmother passed away and how things were done and the celebration of it all and pulling out the family silver and that sort of thing. I loved it. So maybe some of the stories that they've had on top of some of these recipes really touched home with me is one of the reasons why I'm so fond of the cookbook. And you can find it on Amazon.com. All right, so now those are, you know, pretty tender right there. So we're gonna start with the rest of the ingredients. So now we're gonna put in a little bit of flour, and this gives a little bit of thickness to this casserole, and then some brown sugar. Now I know I've got your interest sparked now, because these are just unusual. All right, so now I've got some diced tomatoes with the juice, and these are just canned tomatoes. You know, on any recipe, you kind of start to make it your own. You could do a rotel tomato with this if you wanted it to be a little bit spicier. All right, so now I'm gonna add in my butter beans to this, and I have greased a 9x9 square casserole dish. And one of the things that we'll talk about in presentation today is when you take something, always put your name on the bottom of the dish, because that's really helpful for whomever is in the kitchen taking care of things. All right, so I'll bring my casserole dish over. I'm gonna get this poured in, get the bacon on top, and then I have a little extra chicken broth in case I feel like it needs some more moisture. All right, so in Vera's Corner today, we're gonna go over some tips about setting the proper table, and then I'm gonna get started on Mother's banana bread. So come back with me in just a few minutes. Vera's Corner is brought to you by TaxSlayer. Setting the proper table is so important, and I actually learned how to do it when I was a child. So today in Vera's Corner, I'm going to give you all the tips on what components you need to have, how to place them properly on the table, and then how to make sure you wrap it up perfectly at the end. So let's begin with the place mat. On my dining room table, I love to use a mat instead of a tablecloth. The next item is a charger, and I love these wooden chargers. They're just awesome, especially with my decor today. The next thing would be your dinner plate, right in the center. And now let's start on the silverware. The knife with the blade facing the plate about an inch from the edge of the placemat. The teaspoon goes next. We're going to put the dinner fork on the left-hand side. And then the dessert fork goes at the top with the handle facing to the left. The next item is your goblet, which goes right above the knife. Then the napkin goes next, and in this particular place setting, I'm using it in the center of the plate. And then for this year, my place card is amazing. I found it online, and it's freestylemom.com, and we have her information, so you can look into that as well. Start free today at taxslayer.com. Welcome back, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed Vera's Corner. You know, honestly, my favorite part of having people over is setting the table. So it's just a fun thing to do, and certainly you can get your children involved too in learning those techniques. Learned it from my grandmother. All right, so now we're starting on Mother's banana bread. So this recipe is a quick bread. So some of the steps, like I use in my cakes, like the pound cakes, you have to cream the butter and sugar for 20 minutes. You only cream it until it's blended well. So now I've got my butter in my mixer. I'm going to add in my granulated sugar. And we're just going to let that cream until it's well blended. All right, so while that's blended, I'll speak to some of the things that I had to do in advance. So I love to get my bananas ripe, you know, set those on the counter so that you do have a nice ripe banana that you can mash and have ready for this. I also went ahead and buttered my pans, and this is where I prefer to use the butter as opposed to a pan spray or Baker's Joy. And then the flour, I went ahead and sifted with the baking soda and baking powder. So it's very finely sifted. That's ready to go. All right, that looks like that's blended well together. Another tip is when I'm doing anything with eggs, I go ahead and crack them all and put them into a liquid measuring cup so I can just pour them in, one yolk at a time, and let them blend. You know, and you think about banana bread, it's just such another, it's kind of like the grits. You can have it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. This is just a great idea for the purpose, like the book says, for the perfect funeral. You get so many things. This could be something that they could pop into the freezer. If they had enough food that they didn't need to use this the day of the service, it would be something that the family could enjoy at a later time. All right, so now I'm going to start adding in the flour. And again, I love to use my dry measuring cup just as a way to get it in with hopefully not having it go all over the counter. You know, I can hardly look at my KitchenAid and not think about the fact that I got my very first one by having a yard sale. I wanted a KitchenAid mixer so bad, and I was a newlywed, and needless to say, they're kind of pricey, but they are so worth it. I have the original KitchenAid mixer that I bought that many years ago. It's just a great appliance in your kitchen. Okay, the other thing that goes into this is nuts. And here again, this is where you can get creative. You can use peanuts, you can use walnuts, almonds. So today I'm going to use roasted salted pecans, which is going to give it, a little bit of a toasted flavor. And so, any recipe, and I'm sure that Gaden and Charlotte will understand that some of the recipes in the book I've kind of written in the book and added some of my own little perks to them to make them my own. This makes 2 pans, but a lot of times you have a little extra batter. And if you do, you certainly don't want to overfill your pan. Instead, always have a muffin pan available that you can put the extra and make a couple of quick muffins. We do that a lot with our students in the summer, for camp, to kind of give them an indication of exactly where you need to stop with adding batter to a pan. All right, so I'm gonna whip that real quick, and then I'm gonna hand add the rest of it in. Okay, all right, so this is ready to go. And I'll get the rest of that off in just a second, but I'm gonna go ahead and add in my bananas and my nuts. Oh, I just love this batter. The batter just works really well. And like I said, we've got the casseroles that are going to be coming out. And when you go to someone's house with something, always put your name, because they are going to want to thank you for what you brought. Okay, so speaking of that, when we come back, I'm going to be getting everything ready that's coming to this funeral party today, and we'll talk about presentation. So I'll see you back in just a few minutes. I worried a little bit about doing a show on being dead is no excuse, but hopefully today you have understood why this is one of my absolute favorite cookbooks. There's no pictures. There's a few little sketches in here, but you don't get to actually see what the dish looks like. But as a real advocate of cookbooks, part of what makes it so appealing to me are the stories. And also the fact that the ingredients, you can just read the ingredients in a recipe and know that it's going to be good. One of the things that's really interesting in this book are the top 10 funeral foods. Anything from tomato aspic, fried chicken, stuffed eggs, homemade rolls, Methodist party potatoes, and of course beef tenderloin. So it's just a great book. I hope you'll go to Amazon.com, pick up a copy of it. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. All right, so let's walk back through what we did today, because I think we did some of the top 10. So we started with the Leland grits Gruyere. These are so creamy. I used a coarse grit. We put the Parmesan cheese on the top. It got really crisp on the top. So when you put that spoon in there, it's gonna be really creamy on the inside. And basically what I'm doing right now is I am the kitchen hostess at the funeral. I'm the one that's responsible for having all the food come into the kitchen, decide what needs to go in a warming drawer, deciding what needs to go in an oven. And so I just pulled this out of the warming drawer. So when we get ready to take it to the dining room table, it's nice and warm. All right, then we went to the butter beans, Virginia's butter beans. This, as you can see, is very colorful. I can stir that up and have everything mixed together. It reheats really well if you have any left over. This is a great side dish. And then finally, Mother's banana bread, which is such a big piece that we cut that in half. So you can go ahead and have it cut in half. It's very moist. You could have different things to go on top of it, jams and jellies. So these are all the things as I orchestrate what food is being brought to this house for the celebration after the funeral. I love to keep a list of who has brought what so that the thank you notes can be written. And when I take a dish, I always make sure that I put my name on the bottom, because you want to take it in something that will be appropriate to go on the table. And generally speaking, there's someone that's going to make that list and keep track of it so that the thank you notes can be written. The other things that are always appropriate: honey baked ham, fried chicken. We've got a Jell-O mold from back in the 50s. And you know, honestly, those are coming back. Those have become very popular. We've got green beans and of course, macaroni and cheese. So thinking of things that can be left over, that can freeze if you don't know exactly what people are bringing that day. And anytime you take something, just be sure that you have put it in the appropriate container, that maybe you've labeled it with some directions of how long to reheat it. So as I always say on the Very Vera show, no matter what you do, do it in good taste. I hope you'll pick up my friend's book, and I hope I'll see you back again next week. For more of my recipes, visit our website to order the cookbook.